All right, so let's get started. So welcome to WaterHCI 2022. This is the 24th annual Water Human Computer Interface D-Conference. A D-Conference is kind of like an inverse conference of sorts. And we've been running this since 1998. And this is exploring the nexus or intersection of water, humans, and technology. So first, I'll just say a little bit about myself. My name's Steve Mann. I'm a professor at University of Toronto. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, and I went down to the US to MIT to study. And then some of the work that I was doing was of interest at Stanford University, and then went across to the West Coast, back and forth between East Coast and West Coast. So I kind of know the US, both sides of the country. And I'm back here in Toronto. I live here with my wife and 2 children upstairs, and downstairs on the main floor is my research lab, sort of a research facility or a fun, playful lab where I invent, design, and build things. And so these are some of the artifacts from my childhood, like that oscilloscope on the left there, my father got for me when I was 12 years old. It was broken, time-based didn't work, the dot only went up and down. So I had this thing and I was impatient and wanted to see something on the trace. So I put it on rollers so that I could roll it back and forth like this on the desk to see something impatiently. And I made an interesting discovery when I had it connected to a radar set where I could see the waveform of the radar as an augmented reality overlay right on top of reality itself. And then I realized I made a little basin of water and I had a little vessel floating in there. I was fascinated with bolts and making little bolts and things. I put the oscilloscope moving back and forth with a marine radar and was able to see these waveforms. This is back in 1974. And this was perhaps one of the first WaterHCI, water human computer interfaces, being able to see and understand waves and waveforms and wave shapes. And so I had this kind of one-dimensional thing. And so this is a kind of replica of it that I've got here. I called it the sequential wave imprinting machine, SWIM. And so this is a smartphone. I like to build smartphones. And so then we can see the waveform from the smartphone. And if I go to a slower shutter speed, like maybe say 1/8 of a second, my lips will be a little blurry, but you can see the waveform from the smartphone as I move this back and forth. And if I move it slowly, the dot bobs up and down slowly. And when I move it quickly, the dot moves up and down fast. And if I move it really fast, the dot goes up and down really fast. And I put something in front of it. Let me just track objects here. If I block it, if I put a piece of wood in front of the smartphone, the wave's weaker going through the wood than it is going through air alone. And if I put concrete here, it's even weaker. And if I put a wood block plus the concrete together and block it, it's even weaker going through the wood block and the concrete, but you can still see the waveform there. Now, if I block it with my hand, do you think my hand will block less or more than the concrete, less or more than the wood, or somewhere in between the wood and the concrete in terms of the amount that it blocks? Let me see here. So now I've got my hand in front of it. And what you see is my hand completely blocks the electromagnetic radio waves, totally blocks the electromagnetic radio waves. And so here it is unblocked. And then if I put one finger over the antenna, it blocks quite a bit of it, 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 4 fingers, completely blocks. Like we don't see any of that radio wave versus when I don't have it blocked. And so that tells us something. And what does that tell us? Why does my hand block more of the radio waves than a big thick piece of concrete and plus a big thick piece of wood? Well, the answer is that flesh has water in it, and water blocks electromagnetic radio waves. So radio waves don't pass through water. My daughter said, what happens if you put fruit in front of here? And of course, if you put an apple or an orange in front of here, it also completely stops the electromagnetic radio wave. So you see these radio waves, if you hold your phone like this so you're not blocking it, you can see the radio waves get stronger when I'm closer to the phone and weaker when I'm further away. So, yes. And so the swim shows us those radio waves. And what's remarkable is that the water stops the waves. Just show you. You can see the sequential wave imprinting machine. It's just a row of LEDs connected to a lock-in amplifier with a radio receiver. And so water blocks those waves. And it's water that has these magical property that somehow stops electromagnetic radio waves. So when we wear these computers, so I'm also known as the inventor of the wearable computer. People have described me as founding this field of wearable computing and wearable technology. And what's interesting is when you're in water, let me go back to a more reasonable shutter speed so you can actually see my lips moving. So when you're in water, these things don't work. For one thing, electricity and water doesn't mix. And of course, radio waves don't go through water. And today we're going to have the world's leading expert on underwater Internet of Things, IoT, from MIT, presenting his work on underwater radio communications to bring IoT to the water world. And that's yet another example of water, humans, and technology. And there's this nexus of water plus humans and technology that has been around for ages. In my own practice, another one of my inventions is the underwater musical instrument. So you see those underwater pipe organs over there. Those are examples of underwater musical instruments. And I even have one set up in front of the building there. I'll have to darken down to be able to see it. There it is right in front of the building. I live right across from the Art Gallery of Ontario, the AGO. And that's the hydraulophone there, that big stainless steel sculpture is a hydraulophone, an underwater pipe organ. So that's an example of water, humans, and technology. And so if we look historically, we think of ourselves as cyborgs, we all carry computers in our pocket. I predicted back in the 1970s that there'd be some device that we all have with us that's a telephone, a radio, a computer, a television, all these things that we'd all carry with us. And I built it into eyeglasses at the time, and I predicted that we'd all have some device that would keep us connected and everything. So we've all become cyborgs, as I predicted in the 70s. But if you ask Manfred Clynes, who coined the word cyborg, his favorite example is a person riding a bicycle. And I said, if a person riding a bicycle is a cyborg, then so is a person on a boat. And vessels have been around for more than 1 million years. So the concept of cyborgs is more than 1 million years old, before the invention of the wheel, before the invention of clothing, and even before the existence of Homo sapiens. So cyborgs are innate and natural and ancient. And we really want to focus also on our ancient teachings. What we often like to do is a land acknowledgement, where we acknowledge the indigenous people who've lived on the land. And I often say, though, that a land acknowledgement, many of us feel a land acknowledgement isn't enough. We also need to acknowledge matter in all of its states. We call an element acknowledgement. Land is earth, but there's also the water. Water is just as important as earth. In fact, we like to give what we call an elemental acknowledgement, or a matter acknowledgement, where we acknowledge all the states of matter. Earth, which is solid matter, water, which is liquid, air, which is gas, and fire, which, as we know from the flame detector in a hot water heater that works by checking that the flame can convert alternating current to direct current, it uses the fact that there's plasma in the flame to rectify current and detect when the flame is off. So that fourth state of matter, fire, or what we now call plasma, is important. So we like to acknowledge all the elements, solid, liquid, gas, plasma, Bose-Einstein condensates, and anything else, i.e. at least the 4 elements, earth, water, air, and fire. So we want to give what we call a matter acknowledgement, or a elemental acknowledgement. And by that we mean to include also property that was made from landfill. So if there's land that was made by dumping debris or other stuff into the lake, then that land should still be considered acknowledged as its ancestral origins, because it came from the elements. It came from Mother Earth, it was the water and so on. So we therefore acknowledge Ontario Place and other places that were built by humans. The land was made by humans. We still acknowledge that as land of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the other Indigenous people who have inhabited this place. So now, along those lines, I want to introduce our music video. We have a music video. We have been swimming almost every day at Ontario Place. It's our favorite place. It's where downtown Toronto's only beach exists. There's a beautiful beach there. It's a pebble beach, which we really like because there's no sand or grit or grime or dirt. And because there's no sand, the water is crystal clear. It's beautiful. And we do all kinds of underwater art, underwater research, underwater science. And we even made some of our members of Swim OP. We have about 900 members of Swim OP who swim year-round at Ontario Place. And some of our Swim OP members, Swim Op, made a music video. Monique Barry is a wonderful musician, super creative musician. She made an underwater music video with the help of Daniel Bowman Productions. And the piece is called Time.